going to go in 3, 2, 1, and...
Hi, this is the Gillmor Gang. I'm Steve Gillmor, and joining us from all over the planet are in Palo Alto, Keith Teare.
Hello, everyone.
In the Pacific Northwest, Michael Markman.
How do you do?
In some place on the East Coast, almost, is Denis Pombriant.
That would be me.
In Atlanta, Georgia, right?
Close enough.
Brent, Leary. When you say close enough, what do you actually mean?
I live in Stockbridge. It's about 25 minutes southeast of the city.
Cool. And did I say Brent, Leary? Hi, Brent.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
Excellent. Let's see. There's breaking news.
Frank will be with us in a minute.
Frank says he'll be with us in a minute from London. We'll bring him in as we join. So how has everybody's week been so far?
Appalicious.
Well, it's just been great.
Mine is fine. The lilies are open and the roses are doing well.
Just seems like last week and the week before that and week before that too. So
my two dogs have now destroyed even more of my lawn.
How many dogs do you have?
Two. I have a female pit bull puppy and a female French bulldog puppy.
French bulldogs are so cute.
Yeah.
And speaking of French bulldogs, here's Frank Radice.
Je parle un peu français.
Keep on French.
Oh.
Oh, bon. Mon Dieu. I learned all the French I know from DC comic books in the 60s.
Yeah.
And German, learned a lot of German.
I was going with Pepe Le Pew, but that's okay.
Learned a lot of German from those comic books. Remember all the Nazis in the DC comics?
I was thinking it must be Roger's Adventures of Tintin.
Yeah, that would have been. I wasn't Brit then.
That gave me nightmares.
Or French at that time. I was just trying to look up. My wife came into the room and said, "Oh my God, Trump has just canceled testing." I went, "What?"
Yeah.
At the end of the month, I think.
End of the month.
That's insane.
Well, it's not painful.
And there's some issues with places that are going to continue testing. He's going to withhold some funds or something. What's that all about?
It's about all he has.
Oh man, it's insane! I tell you.
Can he really cancel testing? I mean,
He's not. He can't cancel testing, but he can. He is trying to withhold federal funds from testing.
That's it. That's right. I mean, the federal government was paying for most or all of it, and by removing funding, he basically shuts it down.
I just think he's missing a trick here, because if he could also cancel venereal disease testing and pregnancy,
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
we could get rid of venereal disease just like
I heard he wasn't a big Christmas fan either. So
I would like him to close down all the seismographs so we stop having earthquakes.
He could make gravity optional.
or oxygen.
It is optional, isn't it?
I had a teacher in high school who used to say, the British Parliament can do anything. They could even repeal the law of gravity. I don't know if they could make it stick, but they could do it.
There you go.
Well, it can't stick if there's no gravity.
Yeah, this is true.
Now, British for a second, there are two meanings to the word law.
Yes.
One of which is legislative and the other which is physics. And I think there is no law of gravity in the first.
I think he's going to cut off travel to the EU, though, because, if the EU threatens not to have Americans there, he'll just cut off our travel there before they can do it. So.
Well, he's already done that. I mean, actually, this seems to me like it's clearly personal on the part of the EU, not because he's already kind of, I believe, isn't there an EU ban of to travel to the U.S.?
For
There
certain
isn't a
certain
UK.
countries.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
I think.
One at a time.
Now-
I heard.
It was temporary. I think it lasted 3 weeks, or maybe it lasted a while longer.
Adjacent.
The thing you have to
Adjacent
say
to
about
this.
the EU.
The state of New York is going to require people coming from hotspot states to quarantine for 14 days.
It's
Sounds
not
like
only
the-
New York; it's also
It's the tri-state.
Connecticut and New Jersey. too.
Yes. Cuomo wanted to do it in concert with the neighboring states. But I think that Cuomo was the driver of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
prediction, given Trump's abandonment of any attempt to lead, we are in the next 6 months, it's going to be a chaos of local administrations with the patchwork quilt of policies, and it will feel like we don't live in a nation state.
You mean
You know,
that's
there was a
happening now? Isn't that
Yeah.
what's been happening all along?
Yeah, but even more, it's going to start getting confrontational and gladiatorial.
And I'm living in the South. Please
Man,
pray
you
for
got
me.
it. You got it coming from every direction.
Well, I don't see
Yeah.
that as a prediction. I think that is, it's like the new normal. It's here, folks.
Yes, not a prediction, an observation.
Well, I have Keith. I have a question for you. Maybe you could answer this, and this is purely personal. Sorry to move it aside for that, but if I want to travel to Europe, can I use my my card that says I'm a resident as opposed to my passport that says I'm an American citizen?
Not anymore.
You have to be, Frank, you got to be careful. You're going to end up at an airport and with no permission to go anywhere.
What was that Tom Hanks movie where he got stuck in the airport?
Yeah.
exactly.
I could. You know what? I could do that though, actually, except for the fact that most of the lounges are closed. I could actually live in an airport. I've done that before.
Pre-Brexit, you could travel with a driver's license within the EU states, but I think your best bet now is trying to get Irish citizenship.
Yeah,
Well, I'm actually working on getting a British citizenship, so I'm in contact with the.
Won't
That
help.
won't help. I can get an Italian passport.
That will help.
Yeah.
And
Oh my
that'll
God, I'm
help
gonna
you
have
with
3
Ireland,
passports.
too.
Yeah. All right. There you go. Sorry, didn't mean to hijack that part of the conversation.
You did mean to, and you did.
Oh, and I got my answer.
My favorite experience in Europe in the summer, Frank, is take the car to Southampton, get on the ferry that goes to Brittany, and just drive. It's drive on, sleep the night, drive off. You're in France, and you can go to Spain or Italy or Germany or wherever you want.
That's a good plan. Except I won't drive like the Brits on the wrong side of the street. I get so scared when I'm doing that. So what about this this Flynn thing? Oh my God, that's another wacky, crazy, absolutely nutso thing.
And Flynn has, do you know what "in like Flynn"? Do you know what that means?
Yeah.
Do you remember that phrase?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember that phrase.
It referred to Errol Flynn, the movie star of the day.
Of what day?
40s.
The one that he was in, as opposed to this one.
19.
But then
Oh, okay.
didn't they co-opt that phrase for the in like Flint?
The movie.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely they did.
Which
Wasn't James Coburn in that or something like the
Yes.
series?
There was a series, but I think the first was the best.
First was
But
the
that
best.
doesn't. But that's not talking about this court decision to basically say that the Justice Department wins their deal against to let Flynn off. Am I reading that wrong? Did that actually happen too?
What,
It's not a done deal yet.
how did that impeachment thing go?
Yeah. Well, he did get impeached.
Uh-huh.
Can we
And what
get?
does that mean?
Can we read the Mueller report again? Maybe that.
Yeah.
Well, we
Or
can
the-
read parts of it that we
There's a-
couldn't before. So yes.
Let's go to Paul Lynn for an explanation of Brexit. And
Well,
I mean,
I'll take Paul Lynn for 20.
Isn't that special?
it's obviously a brilliant strategy because it's roughly this: is hey, Trump supporters, your guy's a lying, cheating criminal. Yeah. So what?
So what? Yeah.
It's like the sleazeball defense that Mike Tyson used when he was arrested for an alleged crime. He married somebody and she wanted to get away from him. He said, "You should have known I was a sleazeball. You should have never married me." And that was his
was that Lisa Bonet?
No, that was I can't remember her name now. Now Lisa Bonet married Lenny Kravitz.
Ah, that's right. Yeah, that's another interesting story too.
Yeah, it is actually. Steve doesn't look very interested though.
Actually, if I died and came back as another human being, Lenny Kravitz would be high up the list.
Why?
How a great guy.
Yeah.
I just think he's totally cool. He's got this aura around him, Jimi Hendrix beats him, I think. But that's
I have a funny story for you though. I have a Lenny Kravitz story for you, Ben. So back in the early 80s, there was this guy named Seymour Kravitz, who was on the overnight assignment desk at ABC News when I was working at ABC News in Los Angeles. So Seymour Kravitz, unbeknownst to me, was married to Roxy Roker, who was on the Jeffersons. She played the wife of the guy that lived upstairs, right?
Right. Yep.
So, but I it's like nobody told me. Anyway, he comes to me one night and he says, "Hey, you play the guitar, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I play the guitar." He says, "So my kid Lenny is a guitar player. Do you think you could spend some time with him?" And I'm thinking, Lenny Kravitz. I'm kind of busy. So I basically blew off Lenny Kravitz. So now fast forward about 35 years. And I'm an executive at NBC, and I'm watching the Today Show live downstairs, and who should be on the show but Lenny Kravitz? So I thought, I think I'll go downstairs and I'll tell Lenny this story. I could have access to the green room and stuff like that. And so I go downstairs, and who should be there but his father, Cy. Now Cy now has long hair and a big open silk shirt with gold chains. Very wacky for a guy who's now about 80. And he says, "Hey, Frank, let me introduce you to my son, Lenny." And he says, "Lenny, this is Frank. This is the guy that blew you off when you were 10.
I remember. Wow.
Anyway, there you go. That's my Lenny Kravitz story.
That's a good one.
Are you also the guy who didn't sign the Beatles?
Oh, don't get me. Yeah, right. No, that.
Everybody in the world except for George Martin is the guy that wouldn't sign the Beatles.
Yeah.
And he was evidently blackmailed into doing it.
By whom?
By someone at
Cy Kravitz.
EMI. No, somebody at EMI knew that he was having an affair with his secretary, who he subsequently married, I believe. And
so he wins all the way around.
In this case, yes. But I wouldn't do this at home. I wouldn't try it at home. Okay.
Right.
So
has the show started yet?
It's debatable. Speaking of debates, do you think that there's going to be a debate? This is a Snap Gillmor Gang poll, starting with Keith. Is there going to be a presidential debate? Yes or no? No weaseling on the other hand, etc. Yes or no?
No.
Okay. Michael Markman.
Nope.
Denis Pombriant.
I think not.
Frank Radice.
Yes.
And Brent Leary, are you going to become the second holdout in the second Gillmor Gang poll?
I'm with Frank and Cy Kravitz.
Okay, so that's 2 yeses and 3 no's. Tina Chase, Gillmor.
There was news about the debates this week, which I thought was bizarre.
Say again?
There was news about the presidential debates this week, which I thought was bizarre. the University of Michigan was scheduled to host the second debate, and they said because of COVID they wouldn't, and so the commission said, "Well, we'll move it to Miami."
Right.
Ha! Yeah, and
I-
Miami, how's it going down there right now?
I'm
If there is a debate, I think it will be done without a studio audience, and they may not even be in the same location. It may all
That
be
might be a
remote.
reason for Trump not to want to do a debate.
That's
Uh,
exactly what
my
I was
reason for saying no is Biden doesn't need a debate. Why would
Yeah.
Biden?
No, I think that's what cost Hillary the election, was assuming that she could just run out the clock. And I think Biden would be making a terrible mistake. But I don't think he's going to have to. Because I think that there will be debates.
So that means Tina is the tiebreaker because it's 3-3.
But I saw her on camera, but I didn't hear her.
Well, I tried to get my video on camera, but I'm blocked. So,
I saw it.
Yeah.
You were on for a split second.
oh, see, look.
Oh, look, there you go.
There you
Oh,
are.
You're on.
Yeah.
we
Right
see you
there.
now.
Oh, there I am. There will be a debate.
Okay.
Yeah.
4-3.
Tiebreaker.
I think
Is
it's
that right? 4-3.
Yeah, it's 4-3. She was the tie.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
there's a
Okay.
there's
So-
actually a Gillmor gangette. It's there's 4 members of the Gillmor gang in a sub gang.
If there's anybody in the Gilmore gang, it's Tina.
There would be no Gilmore gang with
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you,
There it
Brent.
I'm there for
That's 20 down, and pick your next square, please.
So I just want to say to the viewers later, you know who to blame for this show now.
Mm.
You saw her.
Not me.
Okay, so enough frivolity. So why would there be a debate?
Why would there be?
Yeah. If it's a tie or a tiebreaker, she says yes, so it's 4-3. So
Yeah.
why is the majority correct?
We don't know that yet.
No, okay, that's true. We
We
don't know if
don't
we're correct, but no, I mean they're going to have at least one debate. I can't imagine there's not going to be at least one.
I think Trump could very easily say the whole thing's rigged and he's not going to play, or he's going to find some excuse not to expose himself to being criticized for his record.
Well, isn't he doing that already? Basically setting it up. He's been sort of hinting at it and talking about, for example, the mail-in votes is going to be the biggest fraud in history, and it's going to completely destroy the results of the election. He said it to the college kids in Nevada yesterday, I guess it was.
Arizona.
Feels like a year ago. Arizona feels like a year ago. And geez, what the hell college were those kids from? That's another story. But that sounds to me like a setup.
Well, he's been setting that up for weeks, for months now.
Yeah.
But he's been setting up.
I think that's different from the debates. I mean, he is setting up reasons to contest the election.
Yeah.
Will he? But then I don't think that it impacts directly whether or not he'll participate in debates. I used to think he had such supreme confidence in his ability to talk his way out of anything and con anything and bully anything that he would want the debate. But as less and less is working for him, I think his confidence is going to shatter. I'm sure you all saw the shot of him walking from the helicopter back to the White House the other night.
Yeah.
But you hear Steve Schmidt.
You never see him without his game face, but he just couldn't even manage it then.
Or without his tie.
He would refuse to debate, lose the election, and then complain that he lost because he couldn't debate.
Yes,
He would
absolutely.
blame somebody else.
Yeah.
But if he had an opportunity to have one debate and it was hosted by Fox News, I think he'd go for it.
What makes you think Biden would put up with it?
Oh, I think Biden
will do it.
has to go along with it.
Yeah,
He has to do
and
what
if
he
it's Chris Wallace, we've all seen Chris Wallace has done, feels like a turnaround. Actually, it feels more like a real journalist.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
there's a lot of real journalists at Fox these days.
Yeah. Even on the morning show, I was surprised Steve Ducey went after him the other day. That just, I didn't expect that at all.
You know, if the polling stays the way it is, Trump's going to need the debates more than Biden, because Trump is in the challenger position. He's lagging in the polls quite a bit. He needs to look tough with Biden, and as a consequence of that, I don't think you'll have just one debate, because that would benefit Trump. I think the parties will have to agree to either no debates or an odd number like 3. And that is going to be more difficult for Trump. Also, historically, first debates, incumbent presidents usually lose. Their challengers are really ready and loaded for bear. So I think if Trump tries to get one debate and goes for it, I think it could be really bad for him.
So
wasn't he asking for 5 debates a few days ago?
That's where they always start.
And he wants to control the moderators too, doesn't he? He wants to influence who gets to moderate the debates.
I think that he should control the moderators, because it'll give him one less thing to try and to contest the election.
I thought Bill Barr was going to be moderating.
Megyn Kelly.
Bill Barr.
What? Somebody said something else. I couldn't hear him.
I said Biden's going to ask.
No, I heard
Megyn
that part.
Kelly.
But
no, I said Trump is going to have Bill Barr do the moderation.
Yeah.
Or Louis Gohmert.
So somebody asked me today, what does Bill Barr have on the president?
Nothing.
What does the president have on Bill Barr?
Yeah, that's more of the question I'd be asking.
Well,
Neither one. Both. Barr is a disciple of Antonin Scalia. He's a big believer in the unitary executive, and he's simply channeling the Federalist Society, and he's been at it his whole career. So Barr is simpatico with Trump in most ways.
So let me ask a general question. To what extent is this Zoom moment changing the dynamics of the political situation?
I think that it allows or disallows for discourse beyond the people that are attached to that Zoom feed. So you as an individual can present your position with less interference or involvement with other people that might not be of a like mind. I think that it's manipulatable.
So you think that's changing? I mean, didn't we have a lot of manipulation in the last election, which wasn't, being conducted on television?
No, I think it's different.
Well, the latest stories in the last couple of days are that social media can be manipulated by almost anyone. Some people are arguing that Twitter is manipulating itself in various decisions that they're taking. Facebook this week decided not to do various Trump things. And so there's this narrative emerging, which is that social media can be manipulated by everyone. To me, that's inane. What's really happening is social media reflects the world, and everyone contests everything. And whoever has the loudest voice and the best tech can, do the best, which is also true if you have a TV station or if you have a satellite distribution system, or if you own a newspaper. So it feels to me as if Zoom has the benefit of not being social media. Zoom is a kind of a closed door, like with the six of us now plus Tina, a discussion where we can choose who to invite, we can publish it, and people can choose to watch it. And so any contestation happens afterwards. So we basically get to clearly articulate. Whereas on, say, Twitter, you might have trolls with it within a second of your tweet, and the whole thing gets broken down before you have a proper conversation.
So what if you distributed your Zoom conversation on social media?
You can do that.
Yeah, you could stream it.
Zoom.
Brent, you do that with your BBC network, correct?
Well, I use StreamYard for that, but I've seen people stream their Zoom meetings to, you could use a service like Restream and stream your Zoom stuff, which could just be us, but people actually watching us, like, watching a TV show or something.
But they actually have an opportunity to comment.
They could comment, but they wouldn't be in the actual discussion like we are.
Yeah.
Right.
There are infinite avenues to speak. The question is, who is listening? Who is watching? Who is reading? I think one of the issues with social media is that the audience can be fragmented and access to the audience can be manipulated. So the fact that anyone can stream anything is one thing. You're still being you still have a mediation by virtue of the algorithms that distribute what you're saying. I mean, Biden can run a campaign from his basement, but who's watching him? How does he work that?
Well, he ran a chat with President Obama last night, and it raised over $7 million.
That's right. But you have to work on how you attract an audience. Putting Obama up is a way to attract an audience.
I bet if he joined us, we'd have a good audience too.
Yeah, think?
If we had Obama on this cast, we'd have an audience too.
Listen, I think so.
If we had Lenny Kravitz on this thing, we'd have a good audience.
Well, except you wouldn't be watching.
His father.
Unfortunately, Sai's no longer with us.
Oh, sorry.
The audience problem is not a variable, right? It's a constant. Everyone has an audience problem, and there's various solutions from marketing to virality to bottoms-up campaign building. There's known ways to attract and engage an audience. So Trump has successfully consolidated an audience over the last 6 years, and his audience is pretty solid. Biden is just beginning. So by definition, even if Biden is better than Trump strategically at social media, he's probably going to underwhelm Trump initially, at least. And that's just skill, really. Skill.
But Trump has been formulating the audience since the first year of The Apprentice.
Yeah.
That's 2015. He already had an army of people.
And even before The Apprentice, I mean, he was a. I don't know if you ever read the book The Audience of One by the New York Times TV critic Pombriant. It is one of the best Trump books of all because it traces his evolution with the evolution of television, from the days of 3 networks through the days of cable networks through the days of social media, and at every stage, Trump has been building a brand. It's usually a brand that's at variance with his actual life and actual achievements, but that's what he's done as a life skill, is make a projection to an audience through the use of media.
He certainly manipulated Page 6 all through the 80s and 90s, and his spokesman, John Barron, apparently had a lot to do with that. And that certainly, Page 6, there's no doubt about it, because it made so much noise in New York. The people at the networks saw that Page 6 was read by the executives at the networks as religiously as the front page of the New York Times.
So he worked the gossip column, and he adjunct to that was his appearances on Howard Stern's show, projecting himself as Mr. Playboy, but also he inserted himself in TV, for instance, as the go-to symbol of being a rich guy. You may remember Chock full of Nuts had a jingle that said, better coffee, Rockefeller's money can't buy. And then they got sued by Rockefeller and they had to take his name out. But Rockefeller used to be the go-to symbol for a rich guy. And Trump, just by inserting himself into TV and making himself available for these little appearances in sitcoms, managed to become, for the period of the 80s anyway, the go-to symbol of a rich guy. It was a great shorthand that sitcom writers could use. Let's get Trump if we want to say a rich guy, and that was even before The Apprentice, even before he began to play the fictional part of a successful business tycoon.
He was very successful in manipulating or utilizing the media in a very sort of pyramidal way. So starting, say, with things like Page Six, and then moving out to, he did an interview with Barbara Hauer early on in the 80s that was on Entertainment Tonight, and it made a lot of noise. And from that point on, he started doing things like Howard Stern and becoming the rich in commercials. As a matter of fact, I even did a few music videos where he played the rich guy, and it just kept growing and growing until The Apprentice. So The Apprentice was just a part of it. I think you could look back now and say that The Apprentice was about halfway through what was going on in his life.
I think I could point back to the very beginning of when he was on the road to the White House. Anybody know the group, The Time? Remember with Mars Day and Prince's group?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, do you remember they did a song called Donald Trump Black Version? And ever since that song, I was like, man, he's going to be the president one day. You got to listen to Donald Trump Black. It's on YouTube. Donald Trump Black Version.
What's the year? What year?
1991, somewhere around there. It's rather amusing.
Morris Day. He was excellent. he was fabulous, very funky.
Those are my guys.
Yeah.
So my question is why do we think that it's relevant to what's going to happen in the next 4 months? His social media expertise or his ability to construct a fictional character, is that prescriptive for who's going to win the election?
Not at all, because the game is over for him. It doesn't work anymore. The reality is 120,000 people dead of COVID. The reality is the collapse of the economy. You can project a fiction in normal times. It's very hard to project a fiction at this point. Everything that he does now looks ludicrous or evil.
Dennis?
Today, I think it was, or it might have been last night, Mark Cuban did an interview with Sean Hannity, where he said, "I'm going to vote for Joe Biden," and Hannity, of course, got in his face about that, and he said, "Trump wants to run a campaign. Biden wants to run a country." And I thought that was a telling statement on the part of Mark Cuban. And I'm not a big fan of Mark Cuban, but I'm more of one now than I was before last night.
Dennis, what do you think?
I don't know. I had a little fire to put out. Sorry.
So have you heard any of the discussion about how Trump's talents, if you will, in making a name for himself and then persisting it, how is that going to impact on the next 4 months?
I think Michael was right. I think that the jig is up. Now, I've been talking about this maybe in some of our conversations for a while now. He's trying to run 2016 all over again, and it's not going to be successful.
So I think that's probably right, but let me interject with reasons to not be cheerful. I mean, the first thing is, and I say this as a Brit who's lived here now for 20-something years, American individualism is quite unique. And individualism is I tweeted this week, individualism is not freedom. Individualism is kind of like bravado, fake patriotism, chest thumping, fuck the virus kind of attitudes. It goes real deep, and it's really stupid, and it's very deep, and it's very white, but not only white. And I think that that's why he sticks at 45 or 44. I've seen some polls go down as low as 36%. But that's a lot of people that are stupid and individualistic. And so you've got that core. Now, what could go wrong? What could go wrong is mainly Biden not getting his vote out and Trump successfully getting his vote out. Then the numbers start to get closer just based on level of passion. So we hope that there's going to be passion for Biden, but any lack of passion for Biden will help Trump a lot, especially in those places where it's close. And I do think, I hate to say this, but Trump is much more suited to what America is than Biden. America is not a collegiate, collaborative, caring about each other place. America is a violent, racist, vicious place. And we Americans, I am one now, I've been one for many years, should care about that. That's what we should be challenging, not whether he broke the law. We should be challenging the core assumptions of what it is to be American.
But there's a lot to commend in what you've just said. Couple of things. Number one, you've forgotten that Trump's voters are committing slow suicide by not wearing masks and everything else COVID related. He is killing off his voting base. Number one. Number two, that core has never been enough to get him above a 50% approval rating. And number three, his behavior over the last 3 years, especially in the last 6 months, has been so atrocious. It has made strange bedfellows of moderate Republicans and Black Lives Matter people. So I take the polling seriously, especially the one with Trump in the 30s. I think Trump has dug himself a hole, and I don't know how he's going to get out of it. If he does, we'll give him the Houdini Award. If he fails, he's going to get a Darwin Award.
But he didn't know how to get out of losing in 2016. He thought he was going to lose. So I don't know that it's all that important what he thinks about how he's going to win.
I think he had the perfect storm, though.
Again,
sorry.
Go ahead, Brent.
I was just going to say that he had the perfect person to run against in 2016 because people hate Hillary for whatever reason. I didn't quite understand, or I didn't understand the depth of the hate for her, but there was a lot of people that flat out hated her. And even though they didn't like him, they're like, I'd rather vote for him, or I'll just stay home, or I'll vote third party. Biden doesn't seem to instill that level of hatred. So I think that's the thing that Trump doesn't know how to answer yet, is how do I run against, vilify somebody who most people think, genuinely speaking, is a pretty decent, at least decent human being, even if they don't think, they want to vote for him.
So Brent.
That's a good point. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt Keith, but I interrupted. That's a good point because yes, they hated her so much, yet it was still so close that he doesn't have the hatred level, Biden. given that it was that close before, that also portends towards a Biden victory, I think.
Well,
he has been working since before the beginning of the year, as soon as Biden emerged as a threat, to try and tear down Biden. The whole Ukraine deal was an attempt to tar Biden with corruption, and it just hasn't stuck. There's just no resonance to it. The email story stuck partially because Hillary did it, and she didn't know how to get out of it, and she never came up with a good way of talking about the fact that she had a private email server. It just came back to but her emails. He hasn't been able to do that to Biden.
Well, keep in mind though that what Trump was successful in doing with Hillary was essentially driving up her negatives. That's what we just talked about. It is an old Republican trope that if you can't win on your own, you drive up your opponent's negatives. That's what W did to John Kerry. That's what W's father did to Dukakis. I mean, in both cases, those Democrats were leading pretty substantially and lost the general election because Lee Atwater and his descendants, Karl Rove, had enough time to drive up the negatives. Trump is driving up his own negatives, number one, and so far he hasn't found a way, as you say, Michael, to make the negatives stick.
The other thing that Lee Atwater did was not just to drive up their personal negatives, but to bring race into it. And I'm kind of astonished at how attitudes to BLM have changed over the past few years. BLM was radical and dangerous and something to be opposed just 3 years ago, and now it is the consensus view that BLM is onto something that needs to be addressed.
Even
I
here,
think that's astonishing, and Trump is on the wrong side of that.
Even here in the UK, it's so big.
No, but listen, the Premier League is wearing Black Lives Matters as the names on the shirts instead of the players' names, that tells you everything. But I was going to say, I think if you put Hillary, Obama, and Biden up, and you ask what the attributes of each were and are, and you ask, why did Obama win, and why did Hillary lose, and where does Biden sit when you look at those two? To me, Obama was not entitled. He assumed it was going to be hard to win, and he fought a campaign on issues that persuaded people to want him. Hillary was entitled. She thought she was going to win anyway. Plus, as Brent said, a lot of people hated her. And so
those two are related, I think.
He acted as the presumed winner. Biden, if we think for a minute that he can be entitled and the presumed winner because of how bad Trump is, that could work out. It probably will work out. All the money should be on that will work out. But it's a very high-risk strategy to be the entitled one who is likely to win and not have to fight a campaign. To me, that makes me, just as a human being, I want Trump out badly. I don't warm to the guy. There's nothing about him other than not being Trump yet that makes me want to vote for him.
Yeah, but the issue is, the personification of the presidency only goes so far. So what if he is a cipher? If, he doesn't resonate on a deeply emotional level. The fact that he doesn't resonate on a deeply emotional level is an asset of his.
Yeah, but that's the entitled point of view. He's going to win.
No, it's not entitled. It's just about
that's
fatigue.
Not entitled. That's not entitlement.
It's got nothing to do with entitled. It's got to do with the fatigue that we are all suffering from. We want less noise, more something that we can depend on, even if it's just divided government.
I don't disagree.
Don't you remember when divided government was such a horrible thing? Now I give my eye tooth.
I agree with that, Steve. But what I'm saying is, I'm just saying personally, right? Give me something to believe in.
Let's go back to what Mark Cuban
don't know
said.
that-
Well,
that-
understand, though,
What Mark Cuban said is really key here. What Biden has been spending a good deal of his time on is setting up a government. What Biden has been spending a good deal of his time on is talking to people about policy, talking to people about appointments, doing the work of how you take over the country. It's not just individuals. I guess I know that it looks like it's this guy versus that guy, but it's really Team A versus Team B. And we see what the Trump team is, and we're learning more and more about what the Biden team will be.
That's not what people
The
don't.
passion is not for Biden as a person. The passion is for getting some confidence back into the government. And the key, I think the key, one more thing, the key attribute about Biden's brand is that he cares. It's empathy.
Well,
And that is
Michael,
something
what does
that
he
you
care
never got
about?
from Hillary. Hillary was a very cold technocrat.
what does he
She
care
knew a
about?
lot. She had good ideas, but you didn't connect them to her person.
Michael, what does he care about? Does he care about student debt? Does he care about 47 million unemployed? Does he care about police killings of black people?
Well, now you're getting into a policy area. I'm talking about the attribute that comes across that people believe about him.
Yeah,
They believe
there's
he's
a lot-
empathetic.
There's a lot
When
there.
you have there's an ad running now that has Lindsey Graham talking in the back of a car about Biden being the most decent person he's ever met in politics. That's the brand.
And crying,
wanna get into
starting to
policy.
tear up when he says it. That was kind of amazing. He's
Yeah.
talking about him and literally starting to cry. He never talks about Trump like that, or has that kind of feeling when he's talking about Trump like that. But I mean, I actually grew up I grew up in Delaware, so all my life, the first 30 something years of it, Biden was the senator. And there's something about him. You would see him down at the train station. That was the one thing that everybody talks about. Every day he would take the train back and forth between DC and Delaware because he wanted to spend the night with his sons, because his wife and daughter were killed in this accident, and one of his sons was like in the hospital for several months. So he seemed to not only be a senator, but seemed to be like a regular guy. He makes a whole bunch of faux pas. He says stupid stuff sometimes, and I think he connects with people in a way that Hillary could never connect with anybody. And I think that's why he has more of a chance than Hillary ever did of winning, because he doesn't make you want to hate him on sight.
I don't disagree. I just think I'm sitting here listening to all of you, and I'm thinking, you don't think there's a fight here? You think it's done?
No, there's definitely a fight, but there's a fight. But I'll tell you, Keith, what you said a couple of minutes ago about those things, that does he care about student debt? Does he care? Yes, actually, my impression is that he does care about those things, and that's part of that empathetic brand. But it's also part of him, the guy who's going to make a new government. He's like, the prime minister's going to go create the government. Biden's going to create a new government, and he's going to use all of those kinds of philosophies. Look, he's even going to, I bet you, incorporate some Green New Deal in there, but he's also going to do some.
AOC. AOC is on his task force for the environment.
And
he has
Republican
embraced
stuff.
Governor Inslee's Green New Deal plan, which most people say is the gold standard for Green New Deal. He has reached out to all the people that were surrounding Bernie and brought them in and invited them in. His actual policy program is going to be far more radically left than Obama's was, and far more radically left than most people are giving him credit for.
But the right is also able to say, this is a guy on the left that we could consider for. We're hearing that every day, I think. I certainly am over here. So that's to me, like, there's a big turning point going on in there. I don't think that says he's not going to have a fight. I think what that says is that these are the things in his quiver that he will fight with.
Well, I'm 65 years old, and I've seen many.
Just a kid.
I've seen many many left politicians ahead of an election promise that they're going to be radical when they get into power. Not even a single one followed through in 65 years of my life. Not one. Harold Wilson, Michael Foot in the UK, Tony Blair became, Mr. Iraq War. Obama, the healthcare, Obamacare just, isn't that great. Let's be honest.
Oh, come on.
What was there before?
Existing conditions. Ball game. How can you say that?
It isn't what people wanted. It was a compromise.
Was he disrated by Trump?
Yeah,
it was a compromise.
It was a compromise.
Of course it was. That's a democracy.
No. Democracies can also deliver the British National Health Service.
Well, we'll see. We'll see whether that's true.
The underfunded, chronically short of all kinds of things. British health service.
Actually, it's way, way better than.
I love the British.
You're rich.
I love the NHS. I love it.
The NHS is absolutely awesome, and America beats it if you're rich.
So what happened with Obama is that he made a calculation with Ted Kennedy and a couple of other people. I think McCain was involved in it too, sort of surreptitiously. They made a calculation which is they had one shot at getting pre-existing conditions covered. And now that decision was incredibly strategic in terms of, for example, the 2018 election. The midterms were completely guided by the fact that the Republicans could not come up with anything approaching the pre-existing conditions. So you can say that Obamacare was a compromise. It was a bitterly fought and one compromise.
Let's not get into Obamacare. My point was different. My main point is the relationship between a politician and what they end up doing is all to do with the people. And if the people become complacent and think this fight's over, we're not going to force them to do anything.
Who do you think is going to be complacent about this fight? We're in the middle of a. We're in the middle of
people have been in the streets now.
We're in the middle of a pandemic.
I've never seen that. I don't remember that since the
Keith, when you say something, then we get to respond to it. So,
all right.
How many global crises do we need before people are going to say we need to make a change? That's fundamentally what's going on here. Whether or not, as Frank I think pointed out, whether or not they're going to be successful at unseating Trump, that's a jump ball.
So
we're a divided country. We're a 50-50 country in terms of, there are Republican issues that make sense to a broad coalition of Americans. They're just not being represented now because Trump owns the Republican Party.
So what's the specific thing we want to ask Biden to do in relationship to the top three issues?
Move into the White House.
No.
Yeah, and bring Kamala Harris with him.
After he's there, what do we want him to do on healthcare? What do we want him to do on racial injustice? And what do we want him to do about student debt? What's the specific ask? There are none, right? Because we're not even talking about those issues.
But this isn't a policy-driven. This is not a policy-driven discussion.
Well,
people do not vote on the basics on the basis of issues. They vote on a very personal, emotional decision. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's
right. And they don't even vote. They don't even vote for their own. They don't even vote for their own interests in a lot of cases because poor people should not be voting for
Steve on that. But I wanted to ask how many people have looked at Biden's policy proposals. Do you know what he's proposing for student debt? Do you know what he's proposing for health care? Do you know what he's proposing for the environment? Or are you just complaining that he doesn't have a good program?
His job is to make us look. I'm not looking because I don't hear any reason to look. He's not saying, read this.
Well, if it's, for most people, that's not important. I agree with Steve. They don't care. Yeah. If it's important to you, that's your reason to look.
And it is there. It is available. It is Googleable. if those are the things that you want to know about. But I actually think that, look, think about the days when the platform was created at the conventions. Nobody, that didn't even matter. Nobody cared about that. That was a big deal for the people in that room or in those rooms. It wasn't about they already knew who they were going to vote for before that platform came out.
So Biden's most recent statement on the police was a negative. He's not for defunding the police. He didn't actually say what he's for. And I'm all about making sure when someone gets in, it makes a difference. I think he's going to get in now, and I want him to get in, but I don't want him to get in with no requirement to deliver anything.
Hey, him just getting out the guy who's in is a good start for me.
Yeah, that's the requirement.
That is like
why did
job
he
number one.
Why did he win the Democratic primary? Obviously, black support was enormously.
Well, Jim Clyburn was the one who handed him at that, because he was on the ropes until Clyburn came out and said, "This is my guy." And Clyburn's impassioned way of saying he was for Biden, that's not something that you could just turn on. Now that's this guy for 30 years of relationship and knowing who the guy is, but to be able to speak on somebody's behalf like that. And I think that's why it lined up the way it did, because of that passion. If Biden doesn't have it or instill it, he has people around him who will help him out with that.
But you're all proving my point. You see, I'm making a fairly reasonable point that I want him to lead on what he's going to do. And you're all saying he doesn't have to.
I want him to win.
Or worse,
I don't think that stuff matters.
If what he's going to do is important to you, then find out what he's going to do.
You're proving my.
He wants to abolish capital punishment. He wants to abolish disparities in sentences between blacks and whites. He's got a whole bunch of criminal justice reforms that are part of his proposals. Yes, he did say he doesn't want to defund the police. That is a negative, but that's not the only thing he said about the issue.
No, I agree.
Defund.
He'd be stupid.
Horrible word.
He'd be stupid if he did.
I think it's the wording that.
Yeah,
because people are using that defund. Yeah, people are using that defund the police to mean abolish the police, and I think that's
people
why
are Trump. People are Trump saying defund the police is abolish the police. Yeah. It should never have been a word that came into the lexicon. It should have been, reimagine the police or whatever, but not defund the police. That was just ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't agree. I don't agree with you about that. The reason the defund the police came in is because there are all these people in the streets with signs, and they wrote on those signs, defund the police.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that it's complicated and pretty unintelligible to understand what that means doesn't mean that this is driven by, the antidote to that is driven by Trump. That's what Trump is saying about everything is no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, he used it as took a club to that defund statement and immediately tried to brand it as they don't want any law and order. They don't want you to have safety. And that's when Biden kind of had to knee-jerk respond and say, I'm not for defund the police. But I think it was more like Frank was saying, it's semantics. I don't think anybody with a sense in their head is saying we don't need police. We need good police. We don't need bad police. We don't need murderous police. And that's why, defund really doesn't mean take the whole police force out. It just means we need to change it. We need to reimagine or reallocate funding. But
violent crime has been coming down since the 1990s. Police budgets have been going up since the 1990s. Do they need all that money? Are there some things that we ask them to do that we could ask better qualified people to do?
Dennis, can you jump in on this, please?
I can't. It's really hard. This conversation is spinning out of control, and while a lot of people are making interesting points, nobody's listening to each other, and I can't jump in.
Okay, so I guess we'll wind it up.
No, I would be the one that you could accuse of not listening, but I promise you I am listening, Dennis. I'm trying to get, I'm actually trying to make abstract points, and it keeps getting down into the example I use, like the police and defunding, and I'm not really trying to get us into that as much. And I think we could have the same debate around what should be the health policy, or should student debt be cancelled? Because what would end up happening is we'd actually have subtle disagreements with each other about what the right things to do are. And that's kind of interesting, right? Because that's the world we'd be in from January.
I don't think you're being strategic. I think it's pretty well documented in presidential politics. When somebody puts a stake in the ground, they immediately lose. They lose because the other side exaggerates what they're talking about. Personally, on just to pick one, to pick healthcare, I think it's absolutely suicidal to say anything about healthcare other than that healthcare should be a right. If I was running for president, that's all I would campaign on. And I would say, look, we've got this Obamacare thing that kind of works. It kind of got gutted by the Trump administration. It could be better. We've got this Medicare thing that a lot of people like and could work. Well, we don't know how to fund it. What we should be doing to enlist the American people is to say, let's run an A/B test. Let's take 10 years and we'll figure out how to make it possible for an employer to buy into Medicare if that's what his or her employees want to do. And let's run the experiment. At the end of 10 years, we'll know by people voting with their feet what the best solution for America is. Instead, we have these ridiculous arguments that don't get us anywhere, that prevent action. And it's time, I think, that we took a strategic look at every one of the major issues that we've been talking about if we want to get anything done for America.
Same on education. I mean, my oldest kid is at Syracuse. My annual bill is $72K. It's, I mean, that's out of control. And that times that by 4, assuming you borrow the whole amount, you're looking at a massive debt at the end of college, which is just fundamentally antithetical to success.
And that's not even grad school. I mean, how do you go to medical school with that kind of debt?
Yeah. So there's something's fundamentally broken about the structure, which I think goes to this individualism point versus society. Margaret Thatcher famously said there is no such thing as society because she wanted to triumph to support the individual during Reagan's time here. And I think that idea there is no such thing as society, Black Lives Matter is the first time recently that we've seen a mass movement question that and say, no, there is society. And Black Lives Matter's fundamental message is we're all in this together and we're not separate to you. Treat us as
I think the people that are saying Black Lives Matter, particularly the Afro-Americans who I've seen talking about this, they're basically saying we've had enough of this. This is not going anywhere. To Dennis's point, we're going to take back the power at the ballot box. Now, the question is, hang on. The question is whether that's going to work or not. What Denis says, A/B test. I think that's going to be the A/B test of the election. Period.
I think you don't actually get to run an A/B test. I mean, you all get this program and you all get that program, and then we'll see what happens. That is the Republican line. They talked about using the states as the laboratories of democracy. Let each state run the way they want to, and then we'll find out who's got the program.
You go down to the individual level, as you don't do it at the state level. You let the individuals choose. That's a true A/B test. Republican strategy is fundamentally states' rights, states-oriented, and it's anti-federalist. Democrats' fundamental strategy is House of Representatives, and everybody gets one vote. And from time to time, one of them breaks through. from time to time, or most of the time, we hear a strategy out of each of them. For example, the Republicans love to divide people and foster this concept of the individual, because as long as you got a bunch of individuals fighting each other, nothing changes and the oligarchy is preserved. So what Steve's saying, I think, is that this election is about the proletariat finally saying enough. We want to change the oligarchy, and I don't think the oligarchy has enough. What is it? All the king's horses and all the king's men aren't going to put Humpty Dumpty together this time.
I agree with that, except for the use of the word proletariat, because I think a lot of the proletariat, including the...
I couldn't think of a good word.
Yeah, it's...
And I don't know what it means. So my vote is that I'm going to give 5 minutes to what I thought was going to be the dominant part of this discussion, which was the Apple event. Anybody want to comment on that?
What Apple event?
Yeah, really.
So that was about 3 years ago, wasn't it?
In dog years, yes.
I'm happy to take that if you want me to.
This TV thing, you know how it works? If you talk, we can hear you.
So I know, but I've been talking a lot and quite rightly been reprimanded a little bit. So I'm being
disagreed with, not reprimanded.
I thought the Apple thing deserves to be thought of as a very transformative event for Apple and for the industry, actually. I think that what they've succeeded in doing is getting complete ownership of the entire stack for all of their ecosystem, whether it be laptops, desktops, iPads, iPhones, their software. They've unified the entire thing under their control with no external dependencies except for supply chains. And they can now innovate as far as their imagination and physics will take them. And they're probably gonna go from strength to strength because of it. The Hey thing was clearly a bit of a negative this week, but the App Store is huge and growing and pumping billions of dollars out to everyone in the world who's a developer and successfully selling stuff. I just don't see them going back from this and anyone coming up to compete with them. The Intel platform, who would really go and buy a Surface Book, a Zeus laptop now? I mean, why would you? The software is worse. The platform is worse. It just doesn't make sense. So I think they've, after 15 years of iterating, they've got to the point where they've won. And this is now, from the winning position, now they get to define, without fear of competition, the next period.
Michael, you used to work for Apple.
Yes, I did. And I think that's right. Steve always used to talk about the whole widget. He didn't really have the whole widget. He had more of the widget than most people, but he had hardware design and software design, but now he's got silicon too, and that makes it's a control of cost and it's a control of capabilities. I couldn't disagree. I also want to say one other thing about having a keynote without an audience was a great improvement. There were so many of those strained applause lines and stage waits as people trundled off and trundled on the stage, and they handed off from one to another. It's much better to pre-record the whole thing, edit together, make a tight show, make it for the home audience. So the presentation was wonderful, and the substance was incredible. There was in everything that they talked about, incremental improvement. You could just churning and adding more capability. One of the really hard things about software design, user interface design, is to present something that is simple for people who want to use it simply, and yet deep for people who don't want to use it simply. The great software can do that. One of the reasons that Excel succeeded is because people who just wanted to use it as a simple way to do sums or to put things into an array could do that. But if you understood how to program Excel, it was tremendously powerful. And you can see them doing that in their UI from the iPhone to every part of the stack. They are trying to keep it simple on the surface and then give you the controls you need to customize it to your interest if you have an interest in customizing it. I thought it was also significant that they demonstrated the new Silicon using Final Cut Pro, which is one of the most demanding programs that they have. And they were able to convey a great deal of confidence in showing that a really tough piece of software could run smoothly in real time, doing a whole stack of operations.
Okay, anybody else commenting? Denis, you said, what event? So you don't think that their consolidation on their own chip architecture is a significant thing?
I do, but I'm not a hardware guy. I'm an Apple consumer. I will go buy what they have, and I will be happy with it, I'm sure.
Frank?
I just want to see Siri manipulate Final Cut Pro.
And that's your cue, Brent, with your voice thing.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. The being able to use Siri to translate in real time between I don't know how many languages. That was probably the most interesting part to me. I mean, the chip thing is good too. We'll see. We'll see if it works out. But yeah, no rocket science. No. I didn't feel like walking away from it like invigorated or anything. But there's good stuff in there.
Well, remember, this is a developers conference. This is not a product intro. So they're not showing you you can go out and buy. They're showing you a platform.
There was one.
I do think that the time that they spent on Siri to me was really. I totally agree with you, Brent. I thought that was important and this whole voice. And I've said this a million times. This whole voice thing is it's really at the very beginning of what I think is becoming the single most powerful user experience that will be out there in the coming years. And that was important, that assignment on the part of Apple to say that Siri is something that they want to take seriously.
I was just going to say the buried announcement that I was most intrigued by was the AirPod Pro is going to do spatial sound.
I was just going to mention that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you tie that together with the new sensor that's in the iPad Pro that's going to be getting into the next iPhone, which does augmented reality, becomes doable, like precise positioning of data in the real world, physical world. I think you can see this future where sound, video, images, and text exist outside of a screen, in your ears and in your eyes. And I remember on the gang, it was quite a long time ago, we talked about whether when Google Glass was out, we had this discussion about whether it's right to integrate everything in glasses or treat the eyes and the ears and the mouth as separate and have devices that are for each of them. And I favored that separation. I think Apple is putting together all the pieces of sensors, input and output sensors that feed the eyes, the ears, and the brain without the need for a screen is the next bit.
I think you're absolutely right. And I've envisioned that or thought about that. And it seems like Apple's not just envisioning it, but making it happen.
Well, it's interesting that in the past few years, they have put a lot of stage time demonstrating augmented reality stunts. And this time they didn't do that. but it's all there. It's all there in the architecture, and the surround spatial sound through 2 earphone pieces is just a hint of what's coming. I think that's an important observation.
I think that the fundamental signal that they're sending is that all of these tools or features or technologies are in service of this transformative thing that we're going through right now with called work from home. But that, AR is meaningless to me until it creates not just a replica of a real world experience, but something that you can't do in the real world. And I think that's going to drive Apple and the technology industry from here on out. Okay. Is Siri trying to tell me something?
Time to end.
Okay.
That's my wife telling me it's time to end, actually.
No, Siri,
That's right.
not you. The other Siri.
I actually now have when I just added to my Google Mesh, Keith, the additional mesh point. It came built in with the Google Voice Assistant, so which I had not played with at all because I'd spent all my time using either Siri or Alexa. And I really like it. It's great. And it's also just made the network work so great. It's ever since you told me about it, I've never been happier with my home network.
I'm the IT guy.
Yeah.
Well, the IT God put together something last night that it's too soon to put it on the show, but next time it will be evident on the using just these household tools. What will it be? You'll have to tune in next time.
No hint?
I deleted all the evidence of the test, so you won't be able to find it.
It's a tease. Ooh.
Yeah.
It's like what we used to do for the Apprentice when I was doing promos for that show. It's called a tease.
So in other words, you're partly responsible for what we're going through right now. Thanks, Frank.
Actually, when my biggest challenge,
I'm there for you, babe.
my biggest challenge,
It's not exactly a resume builder.
it's not on the resume.
biggest
Boy.
is that I have a.
I'd rather put my story about Lenny Kravitz on my resume than that.
Well, you're going to have a chance as soon as we publish this.
realize my microphone must not be on sometimes because I speak and then no one hears me. But I was going to say, Steve's the biggest challenge because I have a very high tolerance for risk. I'll try something, and if it fails, no, it doesn't matter. Steve wants it to be perfect so we could have had this trick this week, but next week next time, it might not be next week, we'll definitely have it.
So this is a post-tease.
Yeah.
A lot of
Perfection.
All right.
Who
thank
wants
you.
perfection?
Keith Teare. Thanks to Keith Teare for reasons that we'll reveal later. Thanks to Denis Pombriant for his admonishments and general crankiness. Really appreciate it.
Is that his new name? Is that his new nickname, General Crankiness?
General Crankiness.
That's the only remaining general in the White House.
Yeah.
Thanks to Michael Markman.
Get me General Crankiness.
I don't know.
I could have been on Hogan's Heroes.
I don't know what the haberdasher reference is.
You know what a haberdasher is?
I do, but what are you talking about?
Oh, look at all the hats. See?
Oh, hats.
Oh yeah, look at all those hats.
Cats?
No, hats in Michael's
Okay.
shot. It's like all those cool, nice colors and everything. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks to Brent Leary.
Who's got an excellent camera.
Yes, he's the latest, and I enjoyed your screen capture that didn't screen share that didn't take over the entire Zoom
Well,
world.
we didn't go to it.
You didn't give it to me. That's all.
It's because he's got a switcher. I've got one now, Steve, so I'll be able to do that next week.
You're
We're going to be switching all over the place. Man.
completely authorized. Just don't do it with.
Switching under the
and,
switching.
And thanks to Frank Radice and the forbearance of the real power in front of the throne.
Freedom's just another word for nothing's left to lose.
Thanks to our
Just
producer,
saying.
director, Tina Gillmor.
Well, if I turn it on,
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be there.
There you are.
There you are.
You can wave.
Okay, hang on.
There you go. Thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time.
Can't we thank our fearless leader?
Yeah, thanks,
What?
Steve.
You.
Steve,
No. Try me next Father's Day, and you'll see how
thanks, Tina.
All right. See you.
Thank you, Tina, and thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
All right.
really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao, Maine.